Hello, welcome to Bored and Confused, where I review shows based on two criteria. One, was I bored? Two, was I confused? Today's show is, it's not a show, it's a movie! Someone asked me if I would review the movie Wicked, and since I've never reviewed the show, I thought I'd just do both at the same time. Now, first a caveat, I haven't seen the show Wicked since it premiered with Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth and Joel Grey and all those people. And going into this movie, I was thinking, oh, I probably am not going to remember any of it. Not true. I remembered a lot. So much that even when they changed lines, I was like, oh, they changed that line. Wow, look at this memory. I must have seen the show more than once because, yeah. Anyhow, so first of all, I'm going to say about the movie. It's the first act of Wicked. First act of Wicked is like an hour and 15 minutes, and yet this movie is 2.5 hours. And yet they really did not add much. They added one song. They just stretched it out. And I have to say that the movie is very truthful to the play. Very truthful. They didn't add a lot. Sometimes they take a scene and they move it into a couple different locations, which is what you do in a movie. But for the most part, it really follows the trajectory of the play. Now, let me tell you, when I first saw Wicked, I was not bored. It is funny, exciting, the music is great, it's a great theatrical experience. But I was confused. There's a lot of things that are confusing to me about Wicked. And understandably so, because it's a kind of prequel of The Wizard of Oz. The question is it a prequel to the books by Frank L. Baum? Is it a prequel to the movie? Is it a prequel to all of it? I think the answer is all of it, because there's movie references, right? In the book, does Glinda arrive in a bubble? That seems like a reference to the movie. I don't know. Let me know in the comments below if I'm off base. And that goes for any of my reviews. So the confusions that I had when I saw the play were a lot of things like, we'll start with Glinda's bubble. Is the bubble made out of magic? But then later, I feel like the Wicked Witch says, this may be in Act 2 because it wasn't in the movie, but they talk about the wizard making the bubble. And so I was really confused about the wizard has no magic, yet she's arriving at a bubble, but on the set, it's like a mechanical bubble. But in the movie, it's kind of a mix. Like there's a seating apparatus, but then there's a bubble. So it feels a little more mechanical. But at the same time, if the wizard is able to make flying hovercraft bubble vehicles, then he might as well be magical, because he's using science or whatever to create these amazing. There's one point where a message is delivered by this flying toy. And when we go to the Emerald City, the train that goes there is this marvel of engineering. And so to me, the wizard is a wizard. Just with engineering, he's a wizard. And there's just a lot of confusions when you watch the play, especially if you know the movie, like why are Munchkins tall? We find out in the second act the origins of a lot of the characters from the movie or the book Wizard of Oz. And some of those origin stories, you're like, wait, what? So maybe we'll save a lot of that for part 2. So a lot of the confusions I have with the musical are still there in the movie. After I saw the show Wicked on stage on Broadway, I checked out the book Wicked from the library and I read that because I had so many questions about the musical. And I have to say, after I read the book, I appreciated the musical a lot more because the book is so much darker and they made a lot of changes that made it a better musical. And so I really appreciated the work that Winnie Holzman did on the book after I read the source material. You know, it's interesting, having reviewed Gatsby this past season and how people are critical of Gatsby because they feel like it focuses too much on the relationship between Daisy and Gatsby and that it's not dark enough. And I hate that argument, because look at something like Wicked. Are people complaining that Wicked isn't as dark as the books, that they really beefed up the relationship between Elphaba and Fiyero, that they gave her magic powers, that they made changes? You know, it's interesting how, I guess because Wicked isn't considered as a classic like Gatsby, whereas Gatsby is like untouchable. But my feeling is, when you adapt something, you have to make changes to make it a better musical. You need a love story. We want that love triangle. That's wonderful. It's delicious. And yeah, so all of these changes giving Elphaba more magic powers. I forget what else is different, but I just remember really going like, oh, you know what? They did a really good job in adapting this novel into a musical. It's a very visually appealing movie. These costumes, these sets, I mean, I go on forever about the sets, the scenic, the Oz is so beautiful and interesting, and there's interesting flora and fauna popping up constantly. And the costumes, Glinda's first pink dress just is gorgeous, and it's unusual. It's very fashion forward and very cool costumes. I mean, this thing is gorgeous to look at. Performances, there's a difference between movies and the stage. Let's be honest, Kristin Chenoweth is hilarious. She's hilarious on the stage and she's hilarious on the screen. But that being said, I've not really seen Kristin Chenoweth do movies. I've only seen her on the little screen, which is a little closer, I feel, to stage, especially if you're doing like a multiple camera kind of show. Kristin is such good comic timing. And I feel like with Grande, Ariana Grande, ironically named because she's tiny, first of all, I think she's cast because she's beautiful. She looks great with blonde hair. She looks like a teenager. She's got the singing voice. And whereas she's not so funny as Kristin Chenoweth, she is amusing. She's not funny. She's just, I didn't laugh once in this movie. Whereas when I saw the play, I mean, I think I may have laughed once was during the, spoiler alert? No, everyone knows. There's a cameo by Kristin Chenoweth. And there was a moment that I did actually go, see, Kristin, you're funny. So I liked Ariana, but I just miss the humor. There's a lot of moments too with Ariana, like the wand, where she's like, ball gown, ball gown. And in the play, the timing is perfect. And it's a joke that happens and goes. I felt like with a lot of the jokes here, they were just letting the actors riff. They were letting Ariana riff on it. So she was doing a lot of silly little things. And then I felt they didn't edit it enough. So like her little jokes they're going on too long. So I was like, oh no, they're not funny. What's great about the stage show is you do the joke, you get out, you move on to the next joke. Let's talk about, was I bored? I was not at all bored during this show until we got to Oz. And then they start singing One Big Day, whatever that song is, in the Emerald City. And then they added a new song. And I just felt like we were in the Emerald City so long, and we were ready to get to the wizard. That, like, we know we're there to see the wizard, so I was getting bored with that scene. Sorry. Although did enjoy the cameo. Although if you don't know who Idina Menzel is and Kristin Chenoweth are, that whole scene, people are going to be like, what's going on? Who are these two women who seem to, size-wise, bear resemblance to these younger women? I'm curious, anyone who's not familiar with the show, which I don't think is anyone who probably is seeing this. So I'm not so worried about spoiler alerts with the plot. I'll try to give an alert, but most of the people who have seen this are familiar with the show, right? So I'm not giving anything away. There's also a little cameo for Stephen Schwartz. That was cute, unnecessary, but cute. The casting for the movie is fantastic. I think Cynthia Erivo she's great. No notes. Who else can we talk about? Everyone's great. Even Michelle Yeoh, who, it's a little difficult because everyone's speaking with basically the same accents, except Fiyero, British accent. I guess he's from a different part of Oz. A little odd. But Michelle Yeoh also has a little bit of an accent, English being her second language. So there are moments where I'm like, why does she sound so different? But I enjoyed the casting. I really enjoyed the actor playing Bach. Sorry, I don't know everyone's name. And I love Jeff Goldblum because he's just Jeff Goldblum-y. He's funny. Jeff Goldblum is funny. And he can play characters who aren't so nice and make them still quite likable. You know, one of the confusions I also have with the play that was even more so in the movie, I think. If you lay down the plot points on a piece of paper, they make sense. But when they're happening in real time, the way they jump from one idea to the next often can feel a little contrived, a little false. The fact that Madame Morrible, played by Michelle Yeoh, is always planning on introducing Elphaba to the wizard, and she's just waiting for Elphaba to be able to control her powers a little more. And I guess she gets there, so she brings her to the wizard, and then of course Madame Morrible shows up, and they're like, what are you doing here? So it's like Morrible and the wizard have this plan of how they want to use Elphaba's power. But yet it seems like they haven't really hashed out this plan. It seems like they're just winging it. No pun intended. So they come and they're like, hey, why don't you try this spell that does this? And she does it, and they're like, oh, that was great. We should do more. And then he lets slip that he's like doing the one thing that Elphaba has come to say that she wants him to stop doing. So it's just, he puts his foot in his mouth, and it seems like they just didn't plan this thing out at all. And so then they upset Elphaba, and then Elphaba flies off, and then they fly off of the handle, and they're like, track her down, and she's evil, and she's wicked, don't believe a word she says. It's just all of the things that happen seem so out of left field. So I just find it a little in the moment. I get it, it's a musical, but I hate saying it's a musical. It's the worst excuse. There's also one thing that I didn't like about the movie is this was a problem that the play already had, the song Defying Gravity. Whenever someone sings it as a cabaret, they sing it all together with no dialogue, and the song is so good when it's just sung as like a 3-minute song. But in the musical, they break it up once, maybe twice, with that little scene between Elphaba and Glinda. But then once she shoots up into the air, they let her finish the damn song. In the movie, they just couldn't help themselves with the special effects. So they added the bridge, Unlimited. The Unlimited, they put that bridge in there twice. Not necessary. And the song just stops like 4 or 5 times. So by the time she gets to the end of it, visually it's very powerful, but musically, it's not as powerful. You've lost me. You stopped the song too many times, and unnecessarily so. She kind of repeats her flying pattern. Like she does a dive like twice, and she goes around twice, and she hovers in the air and sings twice. And I was like, no, wrap this up. But that's kind of indicative of the whole movie. They've doubled the time of the first act. But for the most part of it, it holds your attention because the visuals are so great. And they do elaborate a little bit more on the story, which I appreciated, although I could have used more explanation. There's so many things I don't understand about this world. What is the time dragon? What is the origin of this magic book? Why is there not as much magic in Oz as there used to be? So many questions. Oh, one more thing I want to say about Defying Gravity. You know, you're going to ask me, what's your favorite song in Wicked? It is not Defying Gravity, actually. It's Popular. Popular is my favorite song in that show. It also has such a great lyric. Don't be whatever somebody by my frank analysis. Now that I've decided to become a pal, a sister, and advisor, there's nobody wiser. Guys, that is masterful lyric writing. That's called turning the corner. That is chef's kiss. I have always thought that Stephen Schwartz, he's a great composer and lyricist, but he's really a great lyricist. He's really good. Now, which brings me to Defying Gravity. When I first saw the show, I liked it. I thought the ending of the first act was amazing theatrics. But I didn't leave Wicked saying, oh my gosh, this is the greatest show, it's going to run forever. It has. And people have told me, no, it's a great show. And I'm like, well, I liked it. It was good. I enjoyed it. But I'm not head over heels over it the way some people are. And a lot of that is because it's the confusions of trying to relate it to the story. And also, you know, something really smart, I'm on a tangent, something really smart about Wicked is how, if you don't know The Wizard of Oz, I think you'll be very confused by the show Wicked. But it's such a cultural touchstone that you can just have a character walk on in a gingham dress and everyone in the audience knows exactly who she is. And that's what's so amazing about when you write these shows. Around this time, I think, is when Peter and the Starcatcher came out too, and there were a lot of these origin stories that are very popular. And the smart thing about them, especially for theater, is there's a shorthand. You don't have to explain who a lot of people are because everyone knows who Dorothy is. Everyone knows who these characters are, and we're getting their backstory, which is such a smart thing. So let me talk about my issue with Defying Gravity. Yes, I have an issue with Defying Gravity. It's a little thing, and you're probably not going to agree with me, and I want you to go off in the comments below and tell me how wrong I am. To me, the world of Oz is a magical world. It has talking animals, it has witches, it has wizards, it has magic. It reminds me of Harry Potter. Is there a class about Newton's law? Is there a class about Albert Einstein? No, they're not people from Oz. Oz is more about magic. I'm sure at Hogwarts there isn't, because magic makes science non-scientific, right? So I have an issue with the lyric Defying Gravity, because the word gravity feels like a word from the real world, being sung by a character who is from Oz. And it always struck my ear as strange as I'm defying gravity. I just never imagined hearing a witch say, I'm defying gravity. I would never imagine hearing one of the wizards in Harry Potter say, I'm defying gravity. Well, of course you are. You're in a magical world. I mean, I can go on forever about this show because there's a lot to dig into. But overall, with the movie, only a little bit bored when we got to Oz. Confused, same confusions that I have with the play, but you know what? It doesn't matter. It's so visually satisfying. Oh, one other thing. Okay, spoiler alert. This is for the people who saw the movie, and I think most of you have, right? The chase scene where they turn Defying Gravity into like an 8-minute song. That whole part where they're running up the stairs and then they get in the hot air balloon and Elphaba like immediately knows how to operate a hot air balloon. I always thought the hot air balloon was something that came from the real world, that the wizard, he flew to Oz on a hot air balloon. They don't have hot air balloons in Oz. And so I thought that was weird that they jump in it and then they know how to use it, and that the pilot light was lit, like he must take this thing to go out all the time. And then they destroy it, which made me go, wait a minute. After Dorothy's story ends, the wizard goes in the hot air balloon and leaves, but they've destroyed it. Does he build a new one? See where I'm going with this? Unnecessary. Sorry, I was going to do that. It's phallic. All right. So, Wicked, it's playing in theaters. Go see it. It's amazing. I really enjoyed it. Go check it out.
Don't bore me, don't confuse me.